So I mean that's but I think I think everybody has a story like that where it's oh you're too tall to play the clarinet, let's have you play the double bass, and suddenly they're a professional double bass player. It's like it's these things happen in that kind of way. So that's my story for that.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to OSA Backstage. I'm Dani Meyer, and on today's episode, Serena and I talked to guest conductor Maurice Cohn. He is the music director of the West Virginia Symphony and just the loveliest person to talk to. I think you guys are really going to like this interview. We talk everything from how you should treat every rehearsal like it's the only rehearsal to what he considers a second orchestra. Multiple cats make an appearance, especially at the very beginning, so I apologize if you're only experiencing this on audio. Just know that Sauce was essentially part of this interview from the beginning. It was a delight. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for being here. So, Maurice, it's so lovely to finally see your face. Hi, hello.
Hi, same to you. And Serena, great to see you always.
Yes, good to see you again too.
This is Sauce. She will inevitably be part of this recording. She's very talented, but she's not playing at the Jocelyn with us in a couple weeks. We're so glad you are.
We could do the Leroy Anderson waltzing cat.
Could you waltz? She'll think about it.
Okay.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
So my name is Maurice, and I am the music director of the West Virginia Symphony, and very excited to be in Omaha for the first time.
Do you remember your very first orchestra concert?
I think so. I grew up in Galesburg, Illinois, and there was or there still is a wonderful orchestra, the Knox-Galesburg Symphony, which did around 4 or 5 concerts a year, that size of orchestra. But they also did school concerts, field trip concerts, the way many orchestras do, young people's concerts type of thing. And so I went on a field trip and saw Carnival of the Animals, and it was great.
Did that make you, is that why you became a cellist? I'm curious because I know you're a cellist and you must have heard the Swan and then therefore.
Yeah, I think I was already a cellist at that point. I became a cellist. I was a Suzuki kid, so I started really young. And I became a cellist. It's funny, I think everybody, I'm sure you and many other people have stories like this, these instruments that end up defining huge amounts of our lives. We choose them for rarely logical and rational reasons. It's not like somebody makes a decision tree, a pro cons list, how heavy is it, it doesn't come into it. So in my case, there was a group of kids who we all shared a babysitter, and one of the other kids who shared this babysitter was a few years older than me, so I thought he was super cool, and he played the cello, and I had to go schlep along with them to his cello lessons and wait for him to be done. And I thought, well, if I played the cello, I wouldn't have to wait for him to be done. I could join in. And so, that it was all, and so I mean, but I think, I think everybody has a story like that where it's, oh, you're too tall to play the clarinet, let's have you play the double bass, and suddenly they're a professional double bass player. It's like it's these things happen in that kind of way. So that's my story for that.
There is actually a friend of mine who's a tuba player found a method book for teachers that was essentially here's how you divide kids by instrument.
Oh my goodness. Wait, do you remember any of the methods?
I looked up the bass one and it was essentially above this height by this age and primarily not girls.
Oh man.
Because you're right. You either have my Civil War reenacting friend of my dad's gave me his piccolo and that's how I ended up with piccolo, or you have, in my case, I wanted to play cello and they ran out of cellos. And my parents had told me expressly, no tuba, no drums, no bass. And then my teacher was like, but hey, this quarter size bass is almost the same thing as a cello. I'm defying this method book completely. I'm 4 foot nothing max. I'm 9 years old. And here's a bass. You might as well pretend that
That's
you get
great.
to play cello. Yeah. So did you fall in love with it immediately? Or was it oh, I'm going to figure this thing out?
It was pretty immediate. I mean, I don't know that it was immediately I wanted to be a professional musician. That probably came, I don't know, middle school, high school, a little bit later, But yeah, I was pretty. I mean, I have. Uh, I mean, I got really lucky. I landed with an amazing teacher. I had the same teacher. I think slightly unusually. I don't know. Other people have said. I don't know. I had the same teacher from age, 4 when I started until I went to college. The whole time. And she was an amazing, she still is just an incredible woman, who sort of, took me the whole way. And so that was, yeah, that was a pretty magical experience.
Do you know if she's had other students like you?
She's had a couple, yeah, who've are, a couple who are cellists and a couple who do other things in music. Yeah.
Serena, okay, I don't know if I've ever heard your flute origin story, Serena, and I think we have to at this point.
Um, it's a lot less interesting. I like my brother's reason actually for choosing the oboe, because it's just one sentence long. His reason is because it fit in his backpack. That's why he picked the oboe. Um,
I
and that
love
was
that.
genuinely his response. For several years. It probably still is, but my reason for choosing the flute was I had started band in grade 5 on clarinet, but between grade 5 and grade 6, I moved cities, and in that city, they started band in grade 6. So I was like, well, I've already done a year. I don't want to be, having. So I just picked a different instrument. It's like I'll just start with a different instrument like everyone else, and then I picked flute. And that was it.
So Maurice, for all of your kids are rarely logical. Serena's like, hi, logic was behind every single one of my decisions. Um, so you went to school for cello.
Yes, I went to Oberlin as a cello major. Well, yeah.
At what point did someone put a baton in your hands?
Well, when I was at Oberlin, I was like looking for a student job the way everybody is. And so I started working for a youth orchestra on the weekends, the Northern Ohio Youth Orchestra,
Okay.
uh, wonderful institution. And I was hired sort of mostly, mainly, partly as a cello coach, low strings coach. This was a middle school group. The person who conducted it, Peggy Willett, she was a violin player, and so she was like more comfortable with violins and violas, and she was looking for an assistant who was, good at tuning cellos and basses, basically, but
Yeah, that's
also,
hard.
did some conducting. And so I had that job for basically my whole time in college, working for her and working with the kids, and really loved it. And then so sort of I don't know if that was exactly the first time, but that was sort of some sort of introduction. And then I got into I was very involved in the new music scene in college and started conducting a bunch of my composer friends' pieces. And Oberlin is a small place, so if you and there are no conducting students. I mean, you can't, it's not a, you don't study conducting at Oberlin. That's not how it works. And so it's just, people pick it up and, somebody needs something to put together. And so you do it. And so if you do a couple of those and they seem to go okay, then you end up doing a lot of them. And so that was sort of what happened to me. And I really enjoyed it. Um, and was lucky enough to sort of get some support from faculty there who, saw what I was doing and were very like encouraging about, hey, if we think you might have a shot at this. And so yeah, it was a little bit serendipitous. I think in a way it sort of happened without me realizing it. Like I sort of turned around senior year, getting ready for my senior recital on the cello and thinking, well, I'm actually spending just as much time studying these wacky scores as I am practicing cello, and maybe I should think about this. And but I think some people have some crucible moment. I didn't have that sort of, you know, I don't know, Leonard Bernstein moment type of thing where that's not how it happened for me. I'm sure it happens that way for some people. It was much more kind of uh, in retrospect, it seems like a path, but at the time, it just felt like I was doing things I wanted to do.
When
So
you
did,
when you'd started that job, had you already taken a conducting course, or was there kind of like no formal training? How did you learn the kind of beat pattern basics? Was that something you'd absorbed being in orchestra? Did you read a book, or was there some?
I had done something in high school, not formal. I have put together some sort of I was in like high school jazz band, and I wrote these arrangements for something because a friend of mine wanted to be a Broadway person and didn't have anything to do, and so we like wrote this thing, and I had to figure out how to conduct it because that no was something. So there was something like, I mean, it wasn't totally foreign. Also, I mean, I love No-Yo. That's what we call the orchestra, Northern High Orchestra. I love the kids, but it wasn't, it wasn't the hardest thing in the world to figure out how to just keep time. I mean, it's just, it's 4/4 the whole time, chord note equals 60 to the end, like I
Mhm.
figured that one out. Um, so, it was a great way to sort of ease into it.
Okay, so you also just said that you just wrote an arrangement or multiple arrangements for friends. So you were already looking into actually like composing or orchestrating. What were you doing?
I was a little bit. I mean, I mean, yes. When you say that, it makes it sound like it was this really sort of conscious undertaking. It wasn't so much that. It was more like a friend of mine wanted to sing a Broadway song for the talent show, and we had to like figure out how to do it. And he wanted some backup music, and so I mean, Finale was available, and I put something together. But like, it wasn't like it was I'm gonna learn how to do this. It was just like, okay, well, we want to do this project, so we put it together.
Okay, but this is still awesome because I was just listening this morning. Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, and he's talking to the Beastie Boys, and they're talking about how like one of their founding members was not only the guy that had those ideas, but then he'd show up the next day with the stuff to execute it. Because how many times do we say things like, "Oh, I want to sing." I mean, I never want
Right.
to sing anything, but like, I want to do this tune for the talent show. I wish I had an arrangement, and then you just kind of be bummed out about the fact that it doesn't exist. So, okay, so it sounds like at every turn someone had a crazy idea and said, "Oh, well, if you could just conduct this cello sectional, that would be amazing." You're like, "Sure, I'll figure that out." If you could just arrange this tune for jazz band, that would be great. Sure, I'll figure it out. Like,
I mean,
is that the
I like
attitude?
I like doing things, music is fun.
Yeah.
And so making music is fun. The people in music are often really fun and good people. So um, I don't know. I think I grew up in an area without like there wasn't a pre-college program, there wasn't a youth orchestra, there wasn't anything. It was a little bit um, it wasn't like it wasn't rich in music education. There were pockets of that. Obviously, like my teacher was amazing. There were other people going around who were brilliant. But in terms of the institution of it, I'm from rural Midwest. It just wasn't strong. And so I guess in some sense that could be bad. I think in another sense it was quite freeing because there was no expectation of what it meant to study music as a kid. It was just, music is cool and so and so wants to do this thing, so let's try to figure out how to do this thing, and somebody else wants to do this other thing, so let's try to figure out how to do this other thing. It was quite unguided, which I think maybe in the end turned out to be a good thing.
Do you find that this kind of attitude of I'll figure it out you've maintained throughout your studies and also going into work, or was there a point where kind of this well, of course, there's the level of self-awareness, but was there at any point where that self-awareness dampened this kind of optimism and the sense of freedom you said you had in the Midwest? And have you found a balance, or what's that like now?
Yeah, I think it's probably gone up and down. I mean, you have periods where you're really trying to um, live up to either a particular mentor or a standard or whatever, and a way things should be done. But I think it probably is in there, and I think it probably should be in there. I mean, one of the things about conducting is that, I mean, it's incredibly lucky job, and you sit atop this amazing structure of really sophisticated preparation and planning from the individual player point of view, from the librarian point of view, from the stage point of view. There's an enormous amount of detail and expertise and sophistication that goes into getting an institution ready just for a rehearsal, let alone a concert. And so that's true, and that's really amazing and specific. But at the end of the day, when you're conducting, like your job is to fix the thing if it's not working. And if the way to fix it is not particularly uh in line with the principle of how this was put together, but actually, no, 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 just add an extra quarter rest there. They must have forgotten it somewhere, just put it in. like if I mean that you have to I mean concerts that evening, like your job is to make sure that the concert goes well. You have to be responsible. And so I think once you, I mean, to caring about the process and caring about the detail and caring about the sophistication and complexity of the preparation is important. But once you're actually doing it, I think it probably is good to have a bit of a uh, your friends in your backyard approach because you just have to get it right in the moment. You can't wait a week for new parts. You can't wait, a week for a new second whatever wind player who happens to be sick and the person who came only has a B flat clarinet instead of an A clarinet. Like, it's got to be right in the evening for the public.
So would you say that those two, that separation is kind of like how you've seen being a music director on and off the podium? Does that feel like that divides that role?
Interesting. I'm not sure. I think maybe. Yeah, I think um yeah, because you want, off the podium, you want to care about everything. And on the podium, you want to only care about the things that are really important.
Yeah,
Um, but if you don't spend a lot of time before caring about everything, then you're sort of, you're not able to only care about the things that really matter because you haven't done not just you, I mean the institution hasn't done the adequate sort of setting up of the pieces so that then you can fly.
absolutely. It's like you have to take care of all the our operations team will tell you that if they've done their job well, all they can hope is that no one says anything to them during the entire week.
Right. Which is, yeah, exactly right. And
Mhm.
and and I think that one of the things was that I absolutely see every day in West Virginia, and but was especially true brought home to me when I took the Dallas job as assistant conductor there because it was my first, real professional job out of school, was basically like this second orchestra that is going on
Oh,
outside of the orchestra that is you see on stage with just as much complexity and specialization and training as somebody who plays, E flat clarinet, somebody who like to know how to mark the bowings in the way, how to space the cuts in the way that to make sure that his thing, how to understand, when you have cello risers versus cello platforms, how to play. I mean, all of this in like really, really like the kind of specialization that we associate with different instruments. That if it goes well, it just feels like home. But if it doesn't go well, then you notice.
I love that. I love that. The idea of two orchestras working together simultaneously is amazing. How much of that do you feel you're at the center of in West Virginia? How much involvement has anything surprised you in the amount of involvement, or do you feel like Dallas gave you a really good idea of what to expect?
I think both things are true.
Mhm.
I feel really lucky to have um, kind of musically grown up as a musical professional in Dallas. I mean, it was, I came there straight from grad school and spent 3 years there and really do feel like um, I arrived knowing a lot of no, knowing a fair amount about music, but not really knowing
Mhm.
what it meant to be a professional musician, and left knowing that, and I'm really grateful for that. I think that being said, every institution is so different, and West Virginia is a different institution, different size, different sort of schedule, that sort of thing. That there's things, of course, that surprise you every day, and that you sort of have to think differently, and um, but I don't know that I think those things are more specific, right? The temperament, the how do you sort of carry yourself, how do you think about the public, how do you think about that I think is probably consistent. But
Mm.
whether which decisions I'm involved with, in is dependent on the different institutions. In the same way that, if you're guest conducting somewhere, different than if you're music director, but those are specific things, and it's important to know them, and it's important to sort of understand what's going on. But I think at some on some level they're not as essential. Like the essential things are the music and the relationship with the musicians, the relationship with the broader staff, the relationship with the public. That is more fundamental, and I think that's more consistent institution to institution.
Did did you have like specific mentors that were able to guide you at different points, like when you were at Dallas and now? Do you have people that you've consulted about these things, or that really helped you kind of, as you said, grow, or did you kind of really figure these things out as you went through your own experiences in the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and I'm sorry. I feel like I don't, I'm not trying to avoid it, but I think, the answer is both.
Yeah.
In the sense of, I mean, I feel very lucky. I've had incredible teachers at all. I mean, starting with, Carolyn Suda, my teacher, my cello teacher from ages, young, very 4 to 18 or whatever. And I had wonderful teachers at Oberlin. I had wonderful teachers at Eastman. Professionally, I would say, yeah, in the last couple of years, two really big mentors, in Dallas, Fabio Luisi, the music director, who I worked for very closely, and then um, I spent many summers at Aspen, first actually as a cellist, and then as a conducting fellow, and then as the assistant conductor at the festival, working for Robert Spano. And between
Mm.
Robert and Fabio, I've spent a lot of time with both of them. And I think they're very different, but incredible musicians and people, and I admire them so much in every way. And I think it was a little bit concurrent. Um, I had done all my student years at Aspen, but I was then, hired as an assistant, and so I would do the season with Dallas and then spend the summer assisting Aspen, and the season with Dallas and spend the summer assisting Aspen. And going back and forth between Robert and Fabio like that was a really great education for me, and getting to spend that much time with the two of them. Yeah, I feel really shaped by their very different but very really beautiful approaches both to music and to thinking about how institutions should work.
How, I mean, when you're working with both of them, or when you were working with both of them, did you look forward to a specific kind of week or a specific kind of rep with either? Or was it just looking forward to the changes with each concert, or both?
I think in the beginning, I looked forward to whatever their favorite stuff was.
Mm,
I want to see Fabio do, this thing that I know he loves, or I want to see Robert do whatever. And that was great. I think by the end, I almost enjoyed seeing them do the things that weren't their sort of comfort zone, because it was very revealing about where their sort of instincts were. And you got
mm,
to see, what does this person do in a new situation with when not what they all, when they're confronted by either a new problem logistically or a new problem musically or whatever. And then that's very revealing, because then, when you're in a new situation and you're a little off balance and you're maybe a little, I mean, scared is probably not the right word, but something along those lines, your values come out really quickly because you have nothing else to reach for but what you actually think. There's no muscle memory. And so you get to see it, and it's really exciting, especially if you've spent, a couple years with somebody, really feeling like you get to know them, and then you get to see them do this. So I think that also was by the end something that I really appreciated.
that's super cool. I wanted to, okay, so you said something, building on that, something you said earlier is that when you left, before you got to Dallas, you didn't feel like a professional musician. And I'm curious why that was. Was it because you hadn't yet worked for a professional orchestra full time, or was it just you had just decided to veer off into conducting, and so you didn't regard yourself as a professional? Like what, where was the line for you that let you cross into that?
I think, yeah, I think some of both what you said. I think, certainly, I think for conductors, and, Serena, I'm curious your feelings on this too. I mean, we always start later, and so there is a sense of, I mean, by the time, as a if you're joining the viola section of an orchestra, you've probably been playing the viola for 20 years before you do that. or at least 15. If you join a professional orchestra as assistant conductor, I mean, I don't know. I had a few years at Eastman as a full-time student of conducting. Um, and those were great years. I learned an enormous amount. Neil Verone was a wonderful teacher. The orchestra program was wonderful. I had a great experience. Like it was fantastic, but it was like 3 years, 2 years, 2.5 years, whatever. Um, and it was COVID in there too. There was a lot of stuff going on, and so I think it's just different when you have when you start something later. Um, and
So
then I
that
think
muscle
also
memory, that muscle memory you're talking about is literally just like hours with the baton. So it didn't necessarily matter as much that you'd spent so much time as a cellist, if really the muscle memory is being from the perspective of the podium and with the baton.
I think so, and then I also think that especially professional orchestras, um, especially like big American orchestras, um, they just work on such a different schedule and a different timetable and a different, um, I remember my first rehearsal with Dallas that I was conducting, um, finished in the morning and I came home and I had never been more tired. Not because of uh, necessarily the physical aspect of it, but just because like thinking that hard for 2.5 hours of like, everything you say, everything you're doing, how, making sure it's like, you're thinking about efficiency, you're thinking about music, you're thinking about, and the orchestra is so quick that it's like, you don't have, it's like, it's everything is right there. And so, but you have to live up to that. I mean, you can't be the one slowing things down. Uh, and so, by the time I left, I wasn't as tired because you learn the pace. But in the beginning, you're really shocked by the pace.
I
Serena, is that
Yeah, I mean I agree. I know. I mean, since we were in the same program at Eastman, like just the kind of schedule there is that you get maybe between 9 to 11 rehearsals per concert cycle with a student orchestra, and then in your first job, you're kind of looking at 1 or 2 rehearsals for your first concert because it's probably a family or education or something like that. So you're kind of reducing um like 3 to 4-ish weeks of work into 2 days. And so instead of having like the time to repeat things as much with students because it's something they need, all of a sudden you have to elevate your, I mean, you've been trying to do that your whole, through school, but now you have to. Now it's your job to be working at that level and um, yeah, just be able to match the intensity and the level of the musicians that are in front of you and not letting them down, as you
Yeah,
said.
that definitely that keeps us all up at night. Don't let them
Yes,
down.
don't let them down because and again, you're saying yes, these people have been playing their instrument for 15 years at least when they first get there, but there are also musicians in the orchestra that have been playing in that orchestra maybe longer than you've even been alive, right? And then you're
yeah.
then you're up there saying, and so I think though, that I haven't been in this job for 3 years, but I do understand the sense that it gets a little bit easier just repeating that kind of intensity every time, saying, okay, you only have 1 rehearsal to get the job done. To it's your responsibility to make sure by the concert um, that it's all going to work. Instead of okay, throughout grad school we have had 3 weeks for this.
But you have to build to that, obviously. Like if you didn't have that program where I imagine it's like almost like doing sprints to a degree. It's like if you started off and said, okay, you're going to do this massive sprint workout, you'd run yourself into the ground. But if you gradually condense the amount of time that you need to prepare a program, it's almost like your brain is learning how to compress all of these details into shorter and shorter time increments. Or do you
Maybe
just learn what's important?
you learn what's important, but I also
Okay.
think I don't know if you feel the same way, Maurice, with our teacher at least held us to this standard for all 9 rehearsals. So that kind of intensity, I guess I feel like we were exposed to in a certain way. But then we did have the time. But at least that standard of like you are as prepared as possible, and all this stuff, and you're still running that rehearsal as efficiently as possible. Doesn't matter that there's 8 more. You're still going to do that rehearsal.
Mhm.
And so at least I appreciated that maybe the most, but definitely something I really appreciated from my time that helped me prepare for the 1 or 2 rehearsal kind of schedule of professional work. I don't know how you feel about that,
Yeah,
Maurice.
I know. I think that's very well said. I think that's great. Yeah.
Sorry, guys. We're having a cat show in here. Sorry, Maurice. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, I completely have that same sort of had that same experience as Serena did. And I think that um the other sort of learning how to be that to develop the ability to communicate with that level of intensity and that level of specificity and saying so many things at once. At any given time, maybe you're talking to 3 or 4 different groups of people, doing something with your hands, something with your eyes, something, you say something, and none of it is relevant to everybody, but all of it is relevant to somebody. Um, but also at the same time, learning how to do that without it feeling so intense. I don't know who said this, but there's a great line about a very famous conductor. I can't remember who, long passed away probably, was that, no matter how much is left to do and no matter how much time is left in rehearsal, great conducting never feels rushed because you can't do it. You can't rehearse 85 people in a frantic manner, even if there's not enough time. And even if you have to do all these, you have to prepare the education show and you only have 90 minutes and you have even if there's not enough time, it if they feel that you feel you don't have enough time, you're done. You've lost. You've lost. Not on purpose, but like it's just like psychologically, like the whole mood in the room just goes. And so you have to figure out how to do that really intense work, but not have it feel like, oh no, it has to be right this time because we don't have time to try it again, so it has to be right this time.
That's that's really interesting. It can't feel rushed, right? Because one of the one of the hardest parts probably about leadership in general, about being on the podium, is that it's like when a kid falls down and they scrape their knee. You can't you can't tell the kid, like nothing you do can indicate, oh, you got hurt, you shouldn't feel good. It's you have to just give this air of, you're going to be fine, we're going to get through this together, everything is good.
Right.
I did not anticipate so much cat opinion on this podcast. They have
That's
clearly
great.
strong
I am
feelings about conducting.
I'm here for the cats.
I really like that. I really love that mindset though. It's like no matter what, you have to be able to be in the moment, and you can't force anything.
Yeah, I
And
think that's
yeah.
right.
So even though the intensity of the process might diminish a little bit, is this why conductors are up until like 3 in the morning after a concert or a rehearsal? Because their brain is just like, hold up, I need a second to unplug.
It's hard to go to sleep right after. That is true. I've I've found that uh I think that's true. Um because yeah, you're trying to hold so many things in your head. I mean, it's an impossible it's an impossible job. I mean, it's an amazing job. It's a great job. It's the like luckiest thing to get to do, but it's an impossible. So like your best chance is like you're trying to get as much of it as you can. But it's, everyone will sort of fail in their own way about not being able to do this or that. It's impossible, right? And so but you try to create a context where you feel like, you create the conditions where people can rely on each other and they can rely on you for what you need and that you can rely on them and it's, and together you can make it. But there's no way to you can't rehearse your way. Like, you can't rehearse your way to a great performance. It's not possible. Not only is it not possible because we don't have enough time, but even if you had infinite rehearsals, it's like it just wouldn't be possible to go individually figure out every single thing that every single person in the room has to do, like in a computer type of way to make it. I mean, it's just not the way to, it's not possible. So you have to say some things and you have to fix things and you have to address obviously things and sometimes very specific things. But for the really great performances, you have to get people to be playing on the same page. And so much of the stuff that we do as musicians is instinctive and it's sort of because you feel something or because your neighbor does something and you shape together and we're going to go here or we're going to go to this beat or we're going to go to this, this is 4 bars, this is actually 5 bars, this is a surprise, this is whatever. And you can't, there's no way you can't rehearse all of that. Even if you had 10 rehearsals, even if you had more than Eastman has, right? You wouldn't be able to rehearse all that. So you rehearse some things, but then you also have to create enough of a shared understanding of what's going on that everyone can, you know, play and like everyone can join in and then you can get somewhere.
How much of your interpretations then take place in the moment when you're hearing an orchestra for the first time?
It's a good question. I don't know that I know. Um, I mean, I try to come with, um, I try to come with very specific, like a really like specific ideas, but not necessarily ideas that can't change. So, I mean, I think you have to, you know, neutral isn't good in art, right? Neutral is sort of, we don't, it's like a sort of, like uh, the painting that you see at the like Super 8 motel breakfast. Like it's not going to offend anybody and it's also not going to move anybody, right? Like neutral isn't a good speed for art. And so it's good to have opinions and it's good to have ideas about how things should go and it's good to have like a view and taste and everything. That's good. But I think it's not good if it's calcified and it's not good if it's rigid and it's not good if it's uninfluenceable by the way that uh, solo oboe plays this passage and then that changes. Oh, okay, this I didn't think about this that way, but if they want to do that, then maybe we have to set it up in a slightly different way. Or that the way that, this string sound is a different type of string sound than the string sound of the orchestra that I did this piece with the last time. And so maybe this means we lean a little bit differently in this, that we used to feel the trio a little bit leaning backwards, and now we're going to feel the trio a little bit leaning forwards. Or there's a million ways that these things can be affected by a hall, by an orchestra, by personalities. And I don't know that you have to be conscious so much about, oh, now we are going to do this in this. I think you just have to you have to listen and you have to try to make it make sense. I mean, you have to. If it feels like it makes sense to everybody in the room, then it probably does make sense. And we've all played a lot of chamber music, and like when you're playing when you're in the pocket with your friends, right? And so if you're not, then you keep searching until you find it. But I don't know that there's a rule. Yeah.
Do you feel like, okay, so when, like you said, we play chamber music, obviously when something's going well, do you feel the need to identify that in the moment, or do you just keep that quietly to yourself and say like, ah, yes, this is working? It's kind of like you don't want to jinx anything, so you don't say it out loud. How do you?
I think that's right. I think that's right. I mean, if it's then we get into the sort of, you know, uh, rehearsal things. And I mean, that's another thing that I feel like has been something that I've really benefited from watching, various mentors of mine work is sort of, there's a really good portion of conducting which is about knowing what to say, and that's really important. I mean, if something's not together, you have to figure out whether, is somebody ahead, somebody behind, somebody sharp, somebody flat. Like, I mean, that's good, really good. You got to know that. But that's like gets you, I don't know how far, not even 50%. The rest of it is like, when do you say it? Should you say it? This the kind of thing you say at a dress rehearsal? Is this the kind of thing you say at a first rehearsal? Is this, like all that stuff is equally as important. And so but that, requires you just sort of have to feel that.
This is so fun. I'm so curious how much conductors are in their head during a rehearsal process or during a concert, because obviously, if I'm sitting in the bass section, it is that simultaneous, okay, where am I in my part? Where's the orchestra? How is the audience reacting? Like, you kind of have like this three view perspective happening at the same time, but you two are in the center of the storm at all times. How present are you? Thinking ahead? Are you just like present in that exact measure? Are you doing both at the same time? Is it a
What do you think?
multiverse?
Yeah, what do you think, Serena?
Um, it reminds me of what our teacher actually used to say, have this thing about this, where rehearsals you have to be in the past, present, and future. Um, but it kind of explains why I probably enjoy performing like a little bit more than rehearse, because you only have to be in present and future in performance. You're no longer worrying about past, like what may have happened. But in rehearsal, that's what you have to address, right? Whatever it's happened in the past. So um yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a lot to think about. Yes, you're in your head all the time, and ideally that doesn't cause you to do something that causes more problems for everyone.
Right. Yeah, definitely. You don't want to ever be in the way.
Yes.
Sort of Hippocratic oath of conducting.
Yes, do
Do
no
no
harm.
harm.
Hmm.
Nice. Okay, going back to your role as music director of West Virginia,
Hmm.
how have you what has surprised you in that it's come naturally to you in this role?
I don't know. I'm not sure how much has come naturally. I don't know that I would know in the sense of, um, maybe other people would know in terms of, oh, we didn't think we thought that was gonna be a problem with him and it isn't, or we thought that was gonna be fine with him and suddenly it's a problem. I don't know. Um, when you're doing it, you're just thinking about doing it. I do think that it can be a little, not maybe dangerous is too strong a word, but I am wary of thinking too much about what kind of conductor or music director or even musician I am. So when I was a cello student at Oberlin, I studied with Darrett Adkins, my cello teacher for my many years in college, and he has this thing that he said to me once. I think he said it to other people. It's sort of like it's basically what it amounts to. The line is that, the better you get as a cellist, the more you will sound like yourself. But you don't really have to try. Like, you just try to play the music, right? You just try to get it right, try to get everything. But like, don't worry. Like, you will. If there's something inside of you and like you have this thing, and if you just try to get it right, you will end up sounding like yourself. And that's true for conducting, right? I mean, conducting is an incredibly revealing thing to do. I mean, there's no way to conduct effectively without being without being who you are. You have to be genuine. It doesn't work otherwise. And the same thing with leading an institution as a music director. There's no way to lead anything without being who you are. And so I think that will come through. And I sometimes worry that if you think too much about what kind of musician or conductor or music director you're going to be, it ends up becoming affected. And so you just try to do it and
Mm.
you try to do it the best you can and sort of trust that it'll end up having your personality in there somewhere. But I don't think I try not to think about it too much. But I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that might not be the right approach, but that's been how I've approached it.
I love that. I love that concept though, that the only thing you can do is continue to improve. Like there's that very famous Pablo Casals quote. Uh,
Yeah.
how old was he when a reporter was surprised that he still practiced? And he's like, well, I think I'm finally getting better.
Yeah, I love that line.
Yeah. That's fantastic. So the only thing you can do is continue to work on yourself, and therefore you will continue to be a better version of yourself or become yourself.
Right. Because
That's amazing.
you don't want to play a character. You don't want to, oh, I
No.
want to be this kind of conductor. I don't want to be this kind of music director, this kind of public face, because then you end up um yeah, you're playing a role, and I think people see that.
Do you find that your programming as a music director is also a reflection of yourself and your personality? Um, the kind of repertoire that you love? I mean, you also talked about your mentors and watching them do the repertoire that they love. Do you, what is that for you?
Yeah, I think so. It's programming is such a, I mean, I'm sure you have, uh, you can, as much time as you have to program something, it's not enough. Whatever time you line it, if you have a week to come up with idea, if you have 2 years to come up with an idea, it's not enough. Um, and certainly as a music director, I think about programming differently than I did. I mean, I was very lucky in Dallas. I had quite a bit of freedom in terms of, we had restrictions and stuff, but like I had a good deal of freedom in terms of the concerts that I conducted. Um, but as a music director, you're thinking about, you have a lot of constituencies. Of course, you have the music that you like and the music you want to bring to the public and things that you feel you could do particularly well, or that things that maybe you shouldn't do, but a guest conductor could do better than you or something, whatever. But then beyond that, you have a lot of other constituencies. Though you have the orchestra, which is very important. We have musician artistic committee in West Virginia. Most orchestras have some setup like this. That's very important. You have the public, you have the board, you have donors, you have also things that aren't really about necessarily that particular performance, but are about building to something, right? So, if you don't play Mozart symphony for 5 years and suddenly you play Mozart, it's not going to sound very good, right? So you have to think about that in terms of the health of the orchestra as an institute, as a musical institution. And so there's a lot of other things that you think about that end up making it a bit more Tetrisy when you're thinking it from that point of view than if you're just sort of picking a favorites list.
Do you enjoy those parameters?
Oh yeah, I do. I think parameters. I mean, I like parameters. I think parameters are like um, really good. I mean, even everything is you always have I mean, rehearsal time is a parameter. I mean, everything is
Mm.
but you need. I mean, infinite time and money is artistically kind of the same thing as zero time and money, because it's like if you don't have anything, you don't know what your values are until you have to make decisions. And then you can have these conversations. And so I think parameters are great. I mean, obviously too much, whatever, they can be problematic, but yeah.
That totally negates my next question. I love that answer. One of the questions we had for you was, with unlimited time and unlimited money. No, okay, so in that case, like let's say you're music director for a 20-year tenure, and
Hmm.
the orchestra has had the time with you to not accidentally not play Mozart for the past 5 years, right? But
Right.
what piece, what's your we're building to this piece bucket list? Together we will tackle this piece.
So it's a totally fair question, and I'm sorry that I don't have a good answer. But I don't. And the reason I don't is
Mhm.
because um, I I mean, I'm in the phase of my life where the vast majority of pieces I'm doing them for the first time. The vast majority of orchestral rep I have not conducted. I mean, and almost all the pieces that I conduct in a given season, I'm conducting for the first time. Not always. Sometimes, you get to do things more than once or whatever. But that's just I mean, it's if you haven't conducted most if you haven't conducted most of the Mahler symphonies, then you do the first. That's your first one.
Right.
And so that's it. And I have been struck multiple times by the difference I have in understanding something once you actually go through the process of studying it and doing it. And in terms, it's happened with pieces, it's happened with composers who I thought I like could never really understand what this person was all about. I didn't really get them. And then you do a few pieces and you spend these hours and you try to really understand it. And then suddenly you sort of come out the other side and you can see it now and you can get it. And then you have to figure out how to communicate that to other people who were still where you used to be. And like, I don't get it, right? But and so um, I mean, it's really fun. I am having a ball. Like, it's fantastic to be in a place where your sense of music and your relation to it is radically different every 12 months because you're just doing so many new things that it changes your view. But it's also given me low confidence that I'll have the same opinions a year from now about like a bucket list piece that I would have today.
But that's cool on its own, right? Like to know that the self-awareness of I have a long road ahead of me and you get to experience things. It's kind of nice to not, on one hand, you could stick your flag and say like, no, 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 I'm a this kind of person for the rest of my life, and then watch as you're proven wrong. Or you could just
Right.
be collectively flexible. But what's on this upcoming program that you have with us? So we gave you the piccolo concerto,
hmm
but you came back to us with the Mazzoli and the viol. So what had you done those pieces before?
So the Mazzoli I had done it at the time that we had talked about it, and I really like her music. I think it's really wonderful, and it's also kind of I don't know. She's part of a handful of composers who I think are really kind of figuring out what it means to sound American in
Hmm.
21st century, in the way that we think about maybe the way that we think about, Copeland and people like that as quote unquote sound of America in the 20th century. Um, and so I really like her music. And the Viol, I think, is a terrific piece. It's a little bit unusual well, you don't have a lot of examples of it in symphonic writing because it's got this neoclassical side. It was written in the 30s, I think 1933. It's got this kind of neoclassical side, which was in, people like, Stravinsky was doing stuff like that and whatever. But then it's also got the, Weimar Republic cabaret uh, you know, it's much more kind of drinking an old fashioned in some bar in Berlin or whatever. I mean, it's got this other side to it because he wrote Mac the Knife, Three Penny Opera. He's got this whole other life, Kurt Weill, as a theater person, and we don't have a lot of examples in the orchestra literature of that music, which was so important. I mean, that was an incredible
Mhm.
cultural moment. Weimar Germany and that whole everything that was going on, and a lot of those folks came to America as Kurt Weill did. There's all these and there's a whole, there's a whole community of people in LA, from that, mostly from Germany, and associated countries, in those decades. And it's an incredibly important musical story, but not a musical story that we have a lot of access to in the orchestra.
Mhm.
Um, and so one of the things I like about this symphony is that it gives us a window into that as an orchestra, which is something that we don't normally get to do.
And the corn gold, that's one of the reasons why I thought the corn gold would be so much fun. That's oh, I love that. It's right because we had a conversation last night. So many people think classical music and they think immediately like the white wig is just going to sprout out of their heads and they're going to get Baroque period dress and candles everywhere. And the reality is that classical music is so often what the composer wanted to make it. Um,
Exactly. And
as
Korngold, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no,
Well, Korngold is again a part of that community. I mean, from LA and that whole sort of there's a I can't remember what happened. I know this photo exists because I've seen it, but
hmm,
I don't know where one can find it. There's a photo of I think Korngold's in it. I can't remember. Schoenberg's in it. I think maybe Stravinsky, a bunch of these guys in swim trunks on the beach in LA, like 19, I don't know, 51 or something. Well, Schoenberg, yeah, maybe 40, 48 is more likely. But anyway, so it's a great photo. it's a fantastic photo, and it's like, you know, so Korngold is such a nice you know, addition to that sound world and sort of sets it up in a really fun way.
I didn't realize composers were allowed to have fun or go to
I,
the beach.
I mean, you know, occasionally by accident, maybe it happens, never intentionally.
It's like when you discover your teacher at the store over the summer. It's like very Calvin and Hobbes. I thought you were in a thought you were in a crypt somewhere until September.
Right,
Um,
right.
okay, I'm gonna have to find that photo, Serena, and see if we can track that down. Um, this has been absolutely lovely, Maurice. Thank you so much. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but one of the questions we've been asking everybody is okay, and as a cellist as well, I'm very curious about your answer. If you had 30 minutes on stage of no consequences, can't get in trouble, can try any instrument you want to try, what instrument are you going for?
I mean, I think maybe it has to be percussion, right?
Mhm.
Because there's so much stuff going on back there. And there's so many colors and there's so many things. And like the you know, the learning, I had a really wonderful uh relationship and sort of mentorship with the percussionists in Dallas, and just like learning what the range, like I didn't even know what you could ask for. You know, like, oh, you could do that. There's, you know, the things that, like the number of different triangles we would try for something, for something, you know, to and fire time. I mean, it's just amazing the level of um sort of inherited knowledge. You know, I mean, as a section, I don't know that there's another section. Maybe an orchestral librarian is another
Uh,
department, but it's difficult for me to think of another on-stage area where the sort of oral tradition of how you do this and what you do here and no, this kind of thing. And actually, no, for this particular piece, we use the reverse side of the mallet. It doesn't make sense, but that's the only way we get this particular thing. And just the kind of, you know, lineage of it is as crucial for understanding what's going on as in the percussion section. So I might want to go play around and see what's going on. Also, I don't think I would make that much progress on anything else. I mean, if I picked up an oboe 30 minutes later, it would still be silent. So I don't know that it would be a learning experience, just a frustrating one.
I love I love everything about that answer. I think you should absolutely do it. I think you should go back to Dallas and ask the percussionist to let you just play around for 30 minutes and see what happens. Maurice, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. This has been really, really fun. Thanks for the invitation.
We're looking forward to seeing you in just a few weeks here in Omaha for Symphony Jocelyn. Maurice, Serena, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, that was awesome, guys.